Hi there, my name is Alex, and I'd like to share my journey of improving my English listening skills with podcasts. Just a few years ago, the idea of listening to someone speak English at full speed terrified me. I'd often feel lost and frustrated, missing keywords and phrases. But then, I discovered podcasts, and everything changed. And just like many of you, I've spent years trying to improve my English. If I'm being honest, it was my weakest skill, especially listening and speaking. I could memorize grammar rules, write essays, and pass tests. But whenever I had to listen to a native speaker or speak out loud, my confidence would crumble. The turning point came one rainy afternoon. I was on my way home, feeling defeated after failing to understand an audio test in class. While scrolling through my phone, I saw a podcast app and thought, why not? It wasn't like I had anything to lose. That moment marked the beginning of a journey that would not only improve my English, but also change the way I looked at learning. The first podcast I tried was The English We Speak by BBC Learning English. The episode explained the phrase, barking up the wrong tree. The hosts broke it down into simple examples, and their cheerful tone made it so much easier to follow. By the time the episode ended, I was smiling. For the first time, learning English didn't feel like hard work. It felt fun. Little did I know, this small experiment would turn into one of the most impactful habits of my life. At the beginning, I knew I needed to take baby steps. I started with short, beginner-friendly podcasts. Each episode was only 5 to 10 minutes long and focused on simple topics like daily routines, travel, and common phrases. During my commute, I'd listen to an episode twice, once just to get the gist of it, and again to focus on specific words and expressions. One podcast that stood out was ESL Pod. The host explained everyday topics in slow, clear English, and every episode felt like a personalized lesson. For example, in an episode about morning routines, I learned phrases like set the alarm, snooze button, and start the day off on the right foot. These small chunks of knowledge slowly built up my vocabulary and confidence. As I became more comfortable, I started exploring topics I loved, especially travel and storytelling. That's when I discovered The Moth, a podcast where people share personal stories about their lives. I'll never forget the first story I heard. It was about a woman who got lost in Paris and found kindness from strangers. Her vivid descriptions, emotional voice, and pauses between sentences made it easy to follow along. I began imagining myself in her shoes, and suddenly, English stopped being just a language. It became a tool to connect with people and their experiences. I started listening to more storytelling podcasts, like The Amateur Traveler, where the host described hidden gems in Italy and Japan. Through these stories, I learned words like itinerary, wanderlust, and adventurous spirit. Listening to these vivid narratives wasn't just about learning English. It was about being transported to another world. Initially, I thought just listening to podcasts would be enough. But after a few weeks, I realized I wasn't improving as much as I wanted. That's when I discovered the power of active listening. Instead of letting podcasts play in the background, I started treating them like lessons. I'd sit down with my headphones, a notebook, and a dictionary app. While listening, I'd jot down unfamiliar words and look them up later. For example, in one episode about productivity, I learned the words prioritize, overwhelm, and game changer. Afterward, I practiced using these words in sentences, like I need to prioritize my tasks to avoid feeling overwhelmed. I also started repeating sentences aloud, mimicking the speaker's intonation and rhythm. This technique, called shadowing, became my favorite way to practice speaking. At first, it felt awkward, but over time, it helped me sound more natural and confident. Listening wasn't just about understanding anymore. It became a way to actively engage with the language. Of course, there were moments of frustration. Some podcasts were too fast, filled with slang, or discussed complex topics I didn't understand. I remember trying to listen to a podcast about blockchain technology and feeling completely lost. Words like cryptocurrency, decentralized, and mining went over my head. But instead of giving up, I treated these challenges as opportunities. I'd replay the episode at a slower speed, look up key terms, and even read related articles in simpler English. By the end of the week, I could explain the basics of blockchain to a friend. These small victories taught me that progress comes from persistence and embracing difficulty. As my listening improved, I realized I needed to practice speaking too. One day, I joined an online language exchange group where members discussed podcast episodes. Our first discussion was about a true crime podcast. I was nervous. What if I couldn't find the right words? But as the conversation progressed, I surprised myself by using terms like evidence, motive, and witness testimony. Discussing podcasts not only improved my speaking skills, but also gave me a sense of community. I learned from others' insights, picked up new vocabulary, and gained the confidence to express myself. What started as solitary listening turned into meaningful conversations. The real magic happened in everyday situations. One day, I was at a cafe when I overheard two tourists talking about their travel plans. To my surprise, I understood their entire conversation. Summoning my courage, I approached them and recommended a nearby museum. They smiled and thanked me, and we ended up chatting about their trip. That moment felt like a breakthrough. It wasn't just about understanding a podcast or passing a test, it was about connecting with real people. I realized that all those hours of listening and practicing had paid off in the most rewarding way. As my skills grew, I started exploring new genres: comedy, science, business, and even news. Each genre offered something unique. Comedy podcasts taught me slang and cultural references, while news podcasts helped me understand formal expressions and current events. One of my favorites became TED Radio Hour, where speakers shared inspiring ideas about everything from innovation to happiness. Listening to these thought-provoking talks didn't just improve my English, it expanded my worldview. Podcasts became more than a learning tool. They became a window into different cultures, ideas, and perspectives. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that progress doesn't happen overnight. It's built on small, consistent efforts. I celebrated every milestone, from understanding a fast-paced episode to using a new phrase in conversation. Each small win motivated me to keep going. Now, podcasts are a daily part of my life. They've turned English from a source of stress into a source of joy. Whether I'm learning about history, laughing at a comedy show, or getting inspired by a motivational talk, podcasts remind me that language learning is a journey worth taking. If you're struggling with listening or speaking, I encourage you to try podcasts. Start with topics you love. Listen actively, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Remember, every small effort adds up. One day, you'll look back and realize how far you've come. So, grab your headphones and press play. Who knows? Your next big breakthrough might be just one episode away.